Curry is a blend of spices. It has turmeric in it and just cayenne pepper. So sometimes some are hotter than others. This is not a very hot one. Has cumin in it and sometimes a little cinnamon. Different curries are different. And turmeric. And turmeric is what I call the king of spices. It's highly anti-inflammatory. Curcumin, the active ingredient in there, is very highly inflammatory. In fact, they're putting it in pills now, and you'll probably see it in your health food store. You know, buy your curcumin here. And I say, just put turmeric on your food. Turmeric really has no flavor. You could sprinkle it on your salad, turn everything yellow, and put it in your smoothies. Just drink yellow smoothies, especially if you've got arthritis or any inflammatory disease that you're dealing with. Add a lot of turmeric. Very good. And then cumin. Cumin is also anti-inflammatory.
So how much do you spend?
Well, it actually had turmeric is in the curry. That's what makes the curry yellow. Yeah. Turmeric is a root. It's a yellow root. It looks very much like ginger. And curry is actually seeds. So they grind up different things.
The cumin is a seed.
Yeah, cumin is, and
The
curry
is a mix.
Is it? Well, there are,
blend.
yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a blend of
Curry is a blend of turmeric and cumin.
and other ingredients, just
Some
other,
cayenne.
yeah, different.
We should be using a lot of curry.
Yeah, curry. I use a lot of curry. I think it's very good to get in your diet. And as long as you don't overdo curry, I think sometimes people don't like curry because it's probably been overdone in a dish. But a little hint of curry is very nice. And this is some sea salt. And we're going to go ahead and add the coconut butter now, because before, when I made something like this, I would have put butter. And we're going to use the coconut butter. Now, but coconut butter and coconut oil is the same thing. It just depends on the temperature. And as you can see here, it's below 74 degrees. It's probably about below 70 in here.
It was pretty chilly last night.
Yeah. So it turns hard. At 74 degrees and above, it's a liquid. So coconut oil, coconut butter are the same thing.
Yeah, and it's an excellent food source,
yeah,
but also excellent for body lotion and external applications. Jackie put coconut butter on her body after a shower. Yeah. She smells like a cookie in bed.
Oh.
I put it on my face after I shave.
You smell like a cookie too.
Yeah, but only this part.
So anyway, great lotion for your body. I love it. It soaks in very easily. Now, as far as being a fat added to your food, it's one of the, if anybody is cooking anything with a fat now, it's the only fat I would recommend. It's the only fat that's stable with heat. Even olive oil, which is a good fat, you put it in heat, you alter that fat. And when you alter it, it becomes sticky and it makes your blood sticky. And this is why people are getting all these diseases. There's a disease called Hughes syndrome, and it's sticky blood, and I believe it's from eating all this cooked food. You know how cooked food makes your pan full of sticky food? You have to scrub it and scrape it and soak it. If anybody's noticed with raw food, you just stick it under the faucet and it all rinses out. You really don't have to spend a lot of time washing.
Cleaning up is easy.
Yeah. So coconut butter is a good thing. I would have added butter to this, so we're going to use coconut butter as the fat source. And now the last thing we're going to add is some psyllium to give this a little thickness and creaminess. It also helps the mouthfeel of this. The psyllium adds sort of a smooth mouthfeel to it.
Now, psyllium is used as a laxative with most application.
Mind if I turn it on first?
Yeah.
Okay. If you let it sit there, it's going to get all coagulated. So.
The Metamucil generation, they actually take a lot of what you call it.
Metamucil.
No, not Metamucil, psyllium.
Yeah.
But they add to the psyllium sugar and color and all kind of stuff that's really terrible. If you want it, just use the psyllium itself, mix it with some water, and drink it.
And it's
Yeah.
it's the husk of the psyllium seed, not psyllium seed, because if you get that, it won't thicken. It's a great thickener because you don't have to heat it. There are other thickeners some people use. Agar, you have to heat that. Kazoo, you have to heat. So this is what I like this because it just adds fiber, doesn't add any flavor, and it thickens it. You know, you have to be careful. The first time I started experimenting with it, I turned it into bricks. You know, so you have to be careful. A little goes a long way. I would say if you've got a full Vitamix, no more than a tablespoon. So, pardon? You can get it at a health food store, right? Usually in the bulk section. Yes.
You're in a remote area that doesn't have a health food store. Is there a good source for things like that?
Yes, Frontier is great. You can go to their website. I think
FrontierCoop.com.
Right.
And they sell to the pub. You can order anything you want from them.
usually in a pound bag, but you can refrigerate it and use it as you need it. All their spices are tested, and I really like that fact. And they have a lot of organic. Now you have to make sure you say organic because they do have stuff that's not organic. Psyllium is just a plant. It's a plant, and that's the seed of the psyllium plant. Yeah. Oh, it comes from the plantain? Oh, I didn't know that. See, I learned something in every class I ever teach. Thank you.
Excuse me, can you replace the psyllium by flaxseed?
You could. What happens with flaxseed, though, if you've ever noticed, when you put flaxseed in water, it makes this gel, and I think it sort of makes whatever you put in it a little slimy, especially if you get it thick enough. So when I really need to thicken something, I will use a psyllium, especially if I'm using the blender. Sometimes if I've just got something in water, like I'm making an apple pie, and it's a little too juicy, because I have chunks of apple pie in there, I'll sprinkle some ground up flaxseed and stir that in. So anything I have to stir in, I would add ground flaxseed, and usually it takes more for here. That's my reasoning, but you sure could. You could put ground flax in here if you wanted to, if you'd like to add more flax to your diet, but it just might get a little slimy tasting to the mouth. Okay. Nobody, although in this season slime is probably popular, at Halloween. That's sort of a cool thing to do with your kids is you can put flaxseed, ground up flaxseed, put some water in it and add some green powder to it, and make them stick their hands in it and do all kinds of weird stuff with it. Yeah, for Halloween, yeah. So we have
move it into a mixing bowl.
Because we want to add some raisins. And I found that anytime you have curry, for some reason, if it's a little sweet, whatever you make with it you add a little sweetness, like the dates, and of course the raisins are going to add sort of a sweet tart flavor. It's really good with curry. And it just seems like my palate always wants to go for a little sweet when I have curry. I'm going to add the raisins, and these I've soaked. And the reason you want to soak them is to get them soft. Right.
Okay, next we are going to make the pumpkin pie. And the pumpkin pie, again, it comes with the crust. Now, you can make it without the crust. That's the filling part.
What time is it?
What time is it? Sorry, 9:38.
Okay.
The pumpkin pie comes with the crust. You can leave the crust out, and instead of calling it pumpkin pie, you can call it a pumpkin pudding or a pumpkin souffle.
Who wants to leave the crust off?
Oh,
That's
yeah,
the best
yeah.
part.
No, but if you want to cut out on your nuts and so on. Anyway, the pie crust, usually pie crusts are made of three things. It's going to be sugar, flour, and fat. And we imitate that all with raw stuff, and what replaces the flour for us is going to be almonds. Almonds are a lower fat nut, and you can process it in the food processor to a complete powder, or like a almond flour. So this is what you use. And you know that almonds are beginning to get pasteurized. Yesterday during the panel we had some questions about the almonds. These are still from our supply of almonds from the previous crop. The almond crop, the new crop is coming out now. and it's all been fumigated and pasteurized. So we discussed it yesterday. We're not going to talk about it today. Not enough time. So
But don't stress over one little thing, okay? If the almonds are the only thing that's been steamed or cooked in your diet, but it's not, you're still going to have a very good result from eating a raw food diet. So you just have to be relaxed about it. You know, be stressing over almonds will put you in the grave quicker than eating the cooked almonds. Okay? You might want to spoons. So what do y'all think? Good.
So once your almonds are like a consistency of flour or close to, you can add the rest of the ingredient. We're going to be walnuts and pecans. And for some reason, the mixture of pecan, walnuts, and almonds gives the greatest results. Jackie has experimented with pie crust for a long, long time, and she came up with this combination. And it's the only pie crust we make for all kinds of pies. We don't.
But there are
really
other
use
things you
another
can
one.
do with it. You can take this basic pie crust and you can add some coconut to it, or you could add some lemon zest to it, or some orange zest. So those are different ways that you can change it a little bit. So those all work
So
good.
yeah, the last thing that goes in there is some medjool dates. These are for the pie crust?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the, do you have the dates for the...
That's dates.
So, the dates are medjool dates that we took the pits out of them, and we like to use the medjool dates because they're the sweetest date.
No, they're not. They're second sweetest.
Second, what's the first sweetest date?
You are.
Okay.
I say when you get to be over 60, you can be as corny as you want, right? Oh, and we need to add a little vanilla powder. Now, you may want to write this down. You can make your own vanilla powder. We use buckwheat because we really don't like to use the, and that's a little bit of sea salt. We really don't like to use the vanilla in alcohol because we don't want alcohol. It really, since we can't cook it off and it's been highly processed. The vanilla in glycerin really doesn't have a very good vanilla flavor to me. So I experimented with the Vitamix. I thought, well, I'll grind up the vanilla beans in the Vitamix. Well, I did that, and I ended up with, black specks all over the side. And, vanilla beans are pretty expensive. So it's sort of hard to gather up all of those little specks. So I said, well, if I put a grain in there with it, that'll sort of knock off all those little specks, and they'll land in the powder. So the vanilla powder recipe is, if y'all will all write this down, is 5 vanilla beans, and 1/2 cup of buckwheat groats, and you put it in the Vitamix and just turn it on and it all blends up and you've got vanilla powder. And you can use a teaspoon of that vanilla powder you can use in any other recipe. So it replaces a teaspoon of, yes,
2 questions. 1/2 cup of buckwheat what?
buckwheat groats. Like you had in the cereal this morning, that was,
Are they sprouted?
they don't have to be sprouted, you want them dry. So if you want to sprout them, then you need to dry them. You could sprout them and then dry them. Yeah.
So how was the butternut squash souffle, by the way?
Good.
Do you guys dehydrate your almonds?
Until they're dried, until they're
About 8 to 10 hours. No, about 8 to 10 hours. You want to get them completely dry because if no, not 100. We always dehydrate at 95. Because what happens is those dehydrators drift. The temperature drifts a little bit higher, and we don't want to cook anything. If you've gone to all this trouble making raw food, you don't want to be cooking it. And so we just set ours at 95, put duct tape on it, and it stays there.
Yeah.
That way it doesn't get knocked and moved. And so the nuts, when we bring all of our nuts home, what we do is soak them all, and the ones that we want wet, we put in the freezer, and the ones that we want dry, we dehydrate. And that way you're ready to make any recipe. Because, many times you'll read a recipe and it says, soak your nuts for 8 hours. Oh, can't make that one. So you move on and you go through about 10 recipes and you throw up and order a pizza, I can't do this, So to me, that whole nut thing is confusing to a lot of people because you got to soak. And I was throwing away a lot of nuts. They were in the refrigerator, ready to be soaking. And what would happen is I'd have to go to work, or I didn't feel like making whatever I thought I was going to make. And I'd come back and I'd find nuts that were spoiled. And so this happened to me over and over, and I said, there's got to be a better way. And that whole thing of freezing the ones that you want to use wet, maybe macadamia for cheeses or walnuts or sunflower seeds for pate. Those all work well frozen, because if you think about it, nuts in nature, you know, they get wet, they get frozen, they thaw, and they still will make a plant or a tree or whatever. So it's really a good way to shortcut. I'm sorry, only us would have that. Yes.
Question about the vanilla bean powder. You use just the seeds of the vanilla bean?
No, we use the entire vanilla bean.
Oh, and dry it?
We don't dry it, we just put it in like it comes. They come sort of pliable, a little bit pliable. They'll blend up good. You'd be surprised. Yeah, just put, yes.
What was your combination? How much the groats? How many?
A half a cup of the groats and 5 vanilla beans. And that'll work for in any recipe that calls for a teaspoon, half a teaspoon, that'll work. And you do it in the Vitamix, and you can keep it in your refrigerator. It lasts forever. So it's a good way of getting, because vanilla is a wonderful flavor. I think it's a medicinal flavor. Actually, the drug companies were putting it in, they were putting in medications. They had actually bought up 80% of the vanilla crops, and because of what they found is the vanilla made the medicines work better. Of course, as drug companies do, they created their own ingredient that did the same thing, supposedly, that the vanilla did. So I think it makes everything in our body work better. You know, it just, it's been used for thousands of years, vanilla has. And it was actually, you know, traded at one time. So,
Okay.
good spice.
Let's make the pie crust.
Okay.
And we have the all the nuts in there and the dates, and we'll mix it together. There's also some honey that goes into that mixture, but we add the honey at the end, because if I added the honey now, it would gum the whole thing, and it will be very hard to process. So I'm processing this.
And you want to process it until it starts to stick together, which you'll start sort of gumming up on the side and folding in. You don't want to over process it, because if you do, the oil will start coming out. If you end up with a real greasy, oily crust, it just means that you've processed it too much. Yes, it would actually blend it up too much. Now what you could do is, it would be impossible in the vitamins.
But you know, food processors some are very inexpensive.
Yeah, they're pretty.
A really good one that we like, we recommend actually the KitchenAid. The 12-cup KitchenAid is the best one that's available in the market now. But you can get a really cheap one for $40. Will do the same results. You can find them a lot of time in Goodwill. and
Goodwill.
other
I
stores
found
and
them all
stuff.
the time. In fact, that's sort of my hobby. I go around and buy up food processors, you know, $2, $3, because there are people that can't afford them, and so then I pass them on to people. So a food processor is probably one of the cheapest things in your kitchen. I'd get one. It'll save you a lot of time.
And when you take a little bit of the crust and press it together and it holds, the dates are sticking in, so that's good enough. Now we're going to add the honey.
Is there a reason why you grind the almond first and then you put the
Yes, yeah. If she wanted to know why we would grind the almonds first. The almonds are much harder to grind up, and if we put them all in there together, we would actually over-process the walnuts and the pecans, and the almonds wouldn't be ground up enough. So we're actually making them into a flour, and then our other nuts are not chopped up completely. Somebody asked me one time, why wouldn't you use wet nuts and then dehydrate it? Well, if you've ever tried to put wet nuts into a food processor, it ends up to be a paste. It's actually a pate. So we don't want to make a pate, we want to have a little texture in our crust.
And you said you like the KitchenAid, which is what I have. Did
Yes.
you like the 12-cup KitchenAid?
Yes,
better
I
than
love it.
12-cup Queensar?
Yes.
Oh, good.
I think it's better. It has several features about it. It comes with 4 blades, and the price is great. We can get it for $179 for people, and it's so if you're in the market to get a KitchenAid, I don't say we sell only things that I really believe in. It's not like we're just selling this. I really believe that it's a better food processor.
If I want a 12-cup, I think a 7 or 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. If that's working for you,
No, I want a bigger one because I have to do more than one.
well, let us know.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's finish the pie crust.
He he keeps things moving along, right?
Well, that's my job. Okay, you want to make sure the honey is mixed in with
Right.
here.
And the honey, now you could leave the honey out and just add more dates. Now you notice this makes, and we're making this out on a tray. Say if you were having a big party, you're going for Thanksgiving and all the relatives are there, about 40 people, I would say put this out on a tray instead of in pie plates because you can cut it into little squares and serve it that way. So since we have a large crowd, we're going to do it this way. We're going to spread our crust out.
And you see, wearing gloves to do this is really
the
a
honey
good
didn't
idea
get mixed
because
up.
it's sticky. You already said that?
Yeah. Well, the honey didn't get quite mixed up, but that's okay. We're going to mix it by hand. Yes.
Do you have to use my jewel dates for this, or? Can you-
Well, you can use any date. I like it's very sweet. You know, if you're going to add sweetness to something, you want a really sweet, the jewel dates are pretty easy to find out there. Now, be sure and pitch your dates. I don't know whether we mentioned that. The pits are the pits. So we're just going to spread this around and press it into the side. You don't want to have too much around your corners here, although people love the crust. And this crust, now there are other things you can do. If you'll do this, I'm going to describe another little side recipe. You can take this crust and have your children make balls out of it. Balls about so big. And then you take pumpkin and just grate it with a real fine grater, something that grates it very, very fine. Then you roll those little balls in the grated pumpkin till they get orange. And then you take pumpkin seeds and you stick one on top and one on each side for ears, and then one here for eyes and one for a mouth.
Looks like
and
a Mickey Mouse.
No, it looks like a little pumpkin. And so those could be pumpkin treats for Halloween instead of, handing out bad stuff. So that's a side
I got
recipe.
to say that the kids in our neighborhood don't come for trick or treat to our house. I mean, we don't even bother turning the light on.
Well, we quit handing out candy. We started handing out boxes of raisins, and it's like, okay, don't go to that house anymore.
Don't go there, yeah.
No candy.
Okay, so that's our pie crust already done, and now we're going to do the pumpkin pie filling. So this is a pumpkin pie pumpkin. You can see it's the little ones that you can see in the stores. The big ones are not really all that great for eating raw. And
They don't have quite as much flavor. A lot more water. Are these filled here? Great. We have part of it already done. Just show them how to do that.
yeah, I'll do that. Okay, so you take the seeds out of the pumpkin, and you can do it after you cut it. You take the knife. It's easier to peel when you cut it into segments. It's pretty hard, but once you cut it in half, it gets easier. And you need a good kitchen knife to do that. And then I can cut the seeds out of it.
Now,
The pumpkin, the seeds in here are pumpkin seeds. So you can dry them up and
as if you didn't know. Squash seeds.
so you can dry them out and actually.
But they're the same
crack 'em and eat
same
the
pumpkin
inside.
seeds that you buy already shelled.